All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of Game Day Gambles with the Jones Brothers. I am Jeremy here with my brother Josh, and we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of what we touched on in our first episode. For those of you that watched, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Please subscribe, comment. We appreciate all the engagement we have received so far. This episode, Josh is going to dive into our JFL Constitution, which is his creation with minimal input from me, and I have a little something to share leading into that. But yeah, it's an exciting day. Texas versus Alabama, 6 o'clock, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, game day too. Game days at Tuscaloosa today, and they had Joe Namath doing the guest pick, which was cool. He obviously went for Bama. That makes a lot of sense. But what's his name? Uh,
Corso's on our side.
Corso put on the Hook'em hat. So
Yep. I think he's getting a little dementia though. The way they talk to him like sweet old grandpa. You silly,
yeah,
silly, sweet
it,
grandpa, you.
it's tough because sometimes he like talks about the wrong games, and it's
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 like
just hard to watch.
yeah, yeah. It's painful. Um, but I got a little something I'm going to share with you, Josh. Just for those that are watching, Josh does not know what I am about to say and or do, but I felt it was a necessary addition leading into our JFL Constitution talk. And here it goes. For those of you that are American and have taken U.S. history, everyone knows what a preamble to the Constitution is. And here we go. This is the JFL preamble. We, the players of the JFL, in order to form a more perfect league, establish justice, ensure deliberate victory, provide for those lacking common sense, promote the general atmosphere, and secure the blessings of fantasy football to ourselves and you all. Do ordain and establish this Constitution of the Jones Fantasy League.
Wow, did you make that up?
Purely original.
Wow, that's
No
better than
chat
what I've
GPT.
got. Yeah, I mean, it sounded like it could have been. It sounded like a presidential speech. I was just pulling up the preamble that we have, and it's like pretty lame compared to that, actually. Like, so here's the preamble as it reads today, which I think we should probably replace it now, which is the point of this league is to keep in touch with family and friends. All league members are asked to be actively engaged in the league for the full NFL season in friendly competition to win first place. It is important to the league's founders that all league members agree to a set of regulations as set forth in or amended to this fantasy football constitution. Competition has a way of creating hard feelings, and this constitution seeks to prevent those situations. Maybe both. Like, I think yours should start it because it sounds cooler, and then the bottom
Mine
part is like,
purely mimics, if you look at the actual preamble to the US Constitution, it literally mimics the exact grammatical sequence of things.
yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. And
Yeah.
all you have to do is like replace Jones Fantasy League with whatever league you're in, and boom, you got it.
And as a side note, today's episode is called We the People.
I like it. Makes sense.
And Broski, I will let you lead into the JFL Constitution, kind of doing a light breakdown. Don't have to get too deep into it, but we did get some engagement about it after our first episode. Thank you. Shout out to Danny for your interest, as well as some of my hometown homies. And Josh pulling it up as we speak. Obviously, we went through the preamble already, and my more historical preamble to be added on. But I'll let Josh dive in to this because this is, like I said, 99% all his.
I wonder if anybody's actually ever read our constitution in our league all the way through. Like, if I were to just add crazy rules, would anybody even know?
I would say that I know for sure that Dad and I have.
Well, the good news is you have to vote in significant changes, and there's some rules around that. But uh, top level, you've got the draft, got rules and settings, and you've got player trading as the three biggest pieces of this constitution. And as a reminder, this was for we kicked this off last year, so this is our second regular season of the Jones Fantasy League, and I suspect over time we'll be manipulating this as we were already talking about doing. So the draft, part of what's going on here is when we kicked off the league, I wanted to kind of randomize draft order in a fun way, and so we had teams in the, I think it was like the last preseason game or something, where I randomly assigned teams. I made a video of it randomly picking a person from our league and randomly picking a team from the preseason games and assigning those people, and it was highest scoring team, I think, got the highest position in the draft for that year, which was kind of a fun way to kick things off. And that was just to kind of set the pace. This season, we basically, and you'll see this in this table in section 2, basically what we did is at the end of last season, based on the results or outcomes of the 10 teams, we have like a way of translating those into the draft pick selection order for this year. And so this year, if you finish first place, you essentially have the 5th overall pick. And that was intentional, right? We wanted you to have a decent pick opportunity, but we didn't want to have you get the number 1 pick every time.
Yeah.
And
I think the biggest thing there, as far as the redraft order, it incentivizes you to continue to try and participate, even if you don't make the playoffs. I know there's some people that kind of start to slack off and don't pay attention, don't hit the waiver wire as much. But I think this is like a good incentive for the people in the consolation bracket to, fight for their first choice and pick of the next year, and for the bottom 2 to not be the loser.
right, yeah, because if you're at the bottom, you stay at the bottom, which is what happened to Larry this year. So, but the other thing to keep in mind is that it's not just the draft order that we're setting with this organization here, but what we do is we actually let the people pick their draft positions in that order. And so Jeff Powie, my wife's cousin, he got first pick. He finished first in the consolation bracket. He got first pick, and he chose to take the number 9 slot in the draft. And so it's really interesting because you think a lot of people go number 1. Number 1 is the most common, statistically to win a league. It's been proven you take the number 1 pick, but he chose to go number 9 because he liked what he would get at the turn there at 9 and 11, 12, I guess 12. And so it just makes things interesting and puts things more in the seat of the individual instead of just up to some randomization.
As a side note, I recently have started a new league, which I got voted commissioner of, and
Nice.
I pretty much copied all the rules and regulations we got from the JFL and mimicked it. Instead of a half-point PPR to a full-point PPR, even the redraft, I did it all the same. I had to do some long explanations to the guys about how it works, but it's still in progress. Still, some don't understand. But like you said, I think for me, going back to the draft order, I think the sweet spot for me, I don't know about how everyone else feels, is like 4 to like 7 is kind of where I kind of want to be for the overall draft.
Yeah, I mean, I've won from that spot before. It's a good position to be because you get, a solid pick every round, and you don't have, 20, 24 picks or whatever the number is between you every round, every other round. And it's hard because then you have to kind of reach sometimes for people you're not ready to reach for to make sure that you get a good quarterback or a good tight end.
I don't like that long drought between picks, so I need something more consistent.
And that's a 10 team league that you start with the guys, right?
Yeah, it's almost identical in every facet except for the full point PPR portion. Anyways,
Sweet.
keep going.
Yeah. I'm gonna accelerate here, but one last thing I wanted to point out is that I have this clause. The draft should occur within 10 days of the first regular season game,
Mhm.
and this season is a really good example of why we do that, because the closer you can draft to the actual start of the season, the less likely that injuries happen that upset your season from the get-go.
Or contractitis.
Or people holding out on contract. You don't even know if they're going to play for a team, like Jonathan Taylor. Mike Evans, he's in a weird spot right now with his contract. They're not going to re-sign him. Is he going to play harder? Is he not going to play harder? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
And I think the biggest one this season is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp
Ooh,
tweaked his hammy, and I think it was towards the end of I think it was the last preseason game. But anyway, he's on IR now, so he'll miss
yeah,
the first
at
first
least
4 weeks.
at least 4 weeks.
And
Yeah,
I feel like I think he was Larry's first or second pick in the draft.
he wasn't even on my radar. I don't even know if I would have picked him. I don't know how far he would have fallen. Maybe at a late pick, I would have picked him up. But like, he wasn't not even on my radar. I don't like that questionability, but
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, he's a great talent. He's the number one on the worst team in the league this year.
a lot of playing from behind.
He's got Stafford playing thrown to him. So I mean, it could be really, really good, but not for at least the first 4 weeks now. We use Yahoo. I've used Yahoo and ESPN. Yahoo is far superior just from being able to use the user experience is just so much better than ESPN. I've never tried NFL's app or CBS Sports, and there's a couple others. They have their merits too. I think a lot of people who play fantasy football seriously use Yahoo though.
Yeah, I'm in the other league that I just started with the guys that I was telling you about. I've gotten a handful of them. They're giving me a lot of hate about using Yahoo over ESPN, but some of them are starting to come around. They're like, I kind of like this feature just a little bit more than the other one, but
Yeah, you do.
you got some serious ESPN bandwagoners.
It's just so much better. The only thing that I don't like is Yahoo every year seems to find a new way to like add ads, and they do a decent job like building it into the UI so it doesn't feel advertisement-y. But more and more space gets taken up in that app, and it bugs me. But overall, great. So we do $50 league dues from each person in the league, so 500 total pot, and that goes to the top winner of the league. We have a 4-person playoff. So if you're in that playoff, you have a shot at the 500. If you get second place, that's first loser. You don't get anything. A couple things here, and this almost happened this year, but to one of our guys. But basically, if you don't pay the dues by kickoff of the first game of the season, which was the Lions and Chiefs game on Thursday night at 7:20 p.m. or whatever it was, you begin to lose fab budget, so your free agent acquisition budget, every day until your dues are paid, and at some point you run out of fab, right? And that fab is important for picking up free agents. You run out of that fab. Then you have to pay twice the league dues $100 in this case to the league champion before the start of next season, or you get kicked out of the league. It's really harsh, and I don't know how seriously I'd want to enforce that. I'd probably bring it to a vote anyway, which in a family and friends league, I don't think we would actually kick someone out over being late on paying dues, but it's just one of those things that cause heartache in a league, and so it's good to have some guidelines.
Yeah.
So rules and settings is largely the default Yahoo. I don't think we have to get into anything we do.
Well, position wise though, I'd like to talk about, because since we're a shallower league, I'll let you.
Okay, yeah. I mean, a couple things there. I think to me the most important thing about this section is how we manage rules, because people get an itch for changes. They want to add positions, add bench spots, remove bench spots, change point scoring systems. And so we have a whole thing in here about how do you come to those agreements, and when do they apply? Do they apply at the moment that you make the change? Can you do it during the season? Do they then apply for the rest of the season? Do they apply retroactively for games already played that season? Those things really make a difference and can cause a lot of problems. So we like to get in front of that, and there's a higher bar to clear to change in season than it is outside of season. So I think that's a good thing to do. That pushes people to make their suggestions before the season starts, and you can vote on it as a league. I'm a big fan of making sure you vote. As far as positions go, so standard lineup, for most fantasy platforms: QB, wide receiver, running back, tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and I think a typical bench is 5 or 6. But either way, we have a 6-person bench, an IR spot. We added a second flex. Part of my joy of having the draft is being able to dig deep for value add picks that people just aren't thinking about. They could blow up later in the season. And so I like to have that a couple extra spots on the roster to fill and make the draft last a little bit longer and dig a little deeper for talent, especially in a
10-team league. You still have players out there that are got some worthwhile value to them, and you don't want them to sit in free agency when you can make it a more strategic play and add another spot and make it a little bit more competitive. It's like it'd be like the same difference as like in a 4 to 8 person league. All their players are going to be studs. Like
Right.
there's not much like thinking to it, especially if you only have one flex spot.
Well,
But
that's
this,
okay.
but this makes it just a little bit more interesting adding that extra level.
Well, yeah, I mean that's to me that's where can you create the most room for talent, right? We talked about how we did it for draft order. We talked about how we're doing it for positions and starters. So the more talent you can bring into it and the less luck goes on, the more fun it is because then people really shoot themselves in the foot and do silly things, which makes it more fun, right? So one cool thing that we had in our previous league that I brought to this one, so I can't claim it as my idea, but if you double your opponent's score in any given week or better, you get to rename their team, and that rename lasts until they win again. And so a couple things here. One is this is one of the most fun things to do because you can, you got an Aggie in your league, you can say, I love the Horns or that kind of thing. Especially if they have a terrible team and it'll last for a long time. But one of the problems I saw is that people wouldn't change their names until like, middle of the games on Sunday and they'd win their week. And so by, Tuesday morning, they were getting to rename their team back to whatever they wanted. And so there was such a small window to make fun of them, give them a hard time about it. And so what we have in here is, hey, if you don't make the change within 2 days of the name being suggested for the rename, then you start incurring penalties for your fab.
I don't, I'm curious to know how many people, like we were saying earlier, how many have actually read this in our league. I bet you a lot of people still don't know about that.
Yeah, probably. Maybe you ought to bring it up. And
I mean, I knew there was a penalty, but even I didn't know that there was a $20 penalty. But of course,
I mean, that's something I could be better at too. When I send out so I send out a weekly recap and kind of like a preview of the following week. That's something I could do is just like do a spot, a Constitution spotlight, just to remind people of some of these things.
Highlight certain portions.
I mentioned we do a 4-team playoff. We try and do it so where the fantasy championship games between those 4 teams and the championship game are happening before the end of the season, where teams start to rest players. So like if you get to the championship game, and Mahomes and the Chiefs is the number 1 overall seed, and you've got Mahomes and Kelsey playing, and they sit Kelsey or they sit Mahomes or whatever they choose to do, and then your championship's completely shot because they're sitting players in real football. So I try to pull that in a little bit just to reduce the chance of that happening, although it still does happen.
Yeah.
I have a lot about penalties here. I don't remember what this one is. Oh yeah, this is about if you pass your fab because of other penalties you've got, you can like, so this was actually to fix all the penalties I was giving out, right? So if you get yourself in a position where you're just not following up in time or something's going on and you're getting deducted fab, you get down to 0 and you're like, well, crap, now I can't ever get anybody off of free agency or waivers, or off of waivers rather. What am I going to do? I'm always going to be the last dog to the bowl. And so you can buy your way back in essentially and pay for fab dollars. I should probably say something in here about like, you can't go higher than like the next highest person, or you can only go up to like half the total fab that you would have had or something like that.
I mean, yeah, the buy-in $50 would give you back 100 of your fab, which is what we start with.
Yeah, which is sketchy because then like, do you spend all your fab on the first couple weeks and get whoever you want and then rebuy?
I think it should only be for players that like had punishments, had deductions.
Yeah, and I mentioned fab penalties up here, but I think we get clear about that. And off-season majority vote for adding or removing league members, which at some point will happen to us. I mean, we've got friends of friends and family members, and people tend to cycle in and out, and so it's important to have a clause that we mentioned last time how my father-in-law got kicked out of the league. There was no vote for that, and so that was really weird. And so I want to make sure there was at least something in the hopper in case something like that came up.
And I mean, based for us specifically in our GFL league, I mean, most people were really participating pretty actively in the draft group chat and the video conference that you had up. I mean, there's a few people left out, but overall, there's a lot of participation.
Well, I mean, that was a pain point that I had in our previous league, is that like you'd have one or two guys who would auto draft, which to me the draft is the most fun part of the season. And then they'd end up with like, very good teams statistically, right? That would actually do really well. And so they just prefer to do that. And I think part of the fun is you pick your guys and who you think is going to do well and enjoy the draft and try and talk to people on the phone. And so last season we had everybody join. This season we had everybody join, and the people who don't join the conference line are just people who have a hard time drafting while talking.
The older generation.
Yeah, experienced drafters, so to speak. Okay, last section, player trading. Trading is just like one of the things that causes the most heartache in a league. I mean,
it's the biggest loophole for collusion.
yeah, I mean, if you want to cheat or sandbag or something like that, then you're just not allowed in our league. Like that's not cool. This is for fun at the end of the day. And so from our perspective, we're not expecting any friends or family to do that. And if they get caught doing it, they're out of the league. And so we like to just let trades go. If people get bamboozled, right? They're not up to speed with the latest injuries, or they don't take their time to do their research or analyze the trade, and they get hoodwinked by someone, then that's on them. And you never, like, the thing is you never know what's going to happen. You could trade the best player in the league to someone for the two worst players in the starters in the league, and those two starters become the breakout players of the season going forward, and the first person could get hurt. Like it happens like that all the time.
Yeah, especially if you made a trade prior to like Wednesday or so for Kelsey, or made a trade for Cut before there's clarification on his injury.
Yeah, just stuff like that happens all the time, and so we're just like, trade is a trade is a trade. Go for it. We don't need to vote. Like some of the options in typical leagues are you either a commissioner has to approve, so you have one dude that's like looking at the trade and goes, yeah, I like this, or I don't like this, which isn't, to me, that doesn't make sense. And then another one is you can vote. And then so like that voting actually creates opportunities for collusion, because then I'm incentivized to, like, if I don't like a trade, I'm incentivized to go get everybody around me to vote against the trade, right?
Yeah, like if you're playing the guy that's about to inherit a great running back for a crap deal, you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I
And
like
so,
this.
yeah, I mean, it creates heartache, it creates problems, it creates bad feelings. Like if you make a bad trade, that's on you. And even if you made a bad trade, you never know how it's going to work out. So we just like to let it go through. And that's really it. I mean, I think it was good that we actually ran through this. I don't think anybody's actually dissected this with me. I love your preamble edition, and I think we ought to get a little bit tighter about some of the wording and fab penalties. But other than that, I think it stands up pretty well.
I think another thing I'd like to add is I know I hear a lot of positive feedback, and I once again mimicked your lead. Whenever you sent out should I say send out, because you haven't done it more than once now, it's the second season, your post-draft analysis, including Yahoo's analysis and your personal take on each team's draft picks and relative position in the league and your own draft grade. Actually, can you pull up that email?
Yeah, the way you said that made me wonder. You saw that I sent the one for this season, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the one I mimicked for my new league.
Okay.
I copied and pasted that bad boy, took out all the details, and filled in my own.
Well, I copied and pasted it myself. Here, I'm going to stop sharing, so I don't just show all my email, but I'll pull it up real quick.
Pornhub.
All right. So it's a pretty, like, especially after the draft, it's a very lengthy email that I send out for the post-draft analysis. So I'll kind of scan it and show you some of the pieces, but I don't think there's anything sensitive I can't show on here. Just making sure.
I don't think you made any weenie jokes or any sexist.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm just thinking about my screen and like if there's any like identifiable
security number, top right.
Yeah. Okay, so here it is. Basically what I like to do is go, okay, well, what did Yahoo say would be that the top 4 teams for the season and therefore the implied champion? Logan and Carly literally the same spots as last year from Yahoo's playoff picture. They had very good drafts, to be fair. I don't know if they are as good as Yahoo thinks, but they're very good. And they're in the same spot as last year. I'm worried because Carly won last year and I don't want to repeat. We need to get another champion in there, and it should be me. So then I like to go through every team and write down, okay, so what draft grade did Yahoo give them? What are their expected record in Yahoo? And then I get into like, hey, what do I think this team looks like, especially from the unit to unit perspective? So the QB unit, wide receiver unit, et cetera. I go through and I like to look at what I think is going to happen based on my preseason analysis. And then I use that to generate my own grade and give a funny award for, something that happened in the draft, or, how I think their team's shaping up, or just saying something funny about them. And so I like doing this. And what I feel like is when we used to get in our other league, we get draft recap emails or, weekly recaps. It would be very vague, and it would point out just like some very brief, just some highlights. And it was like, it would almost never be about you. And people are really want to see about their own team. What do people think about their team? That, and hear more about that, and kind of get some insight into how that person thinks about the fantasy football. And so that's why I do it this way, because so people can read about themselves and about others and get a sense for those things.
Yeah.
We do one for each of the 10 people here.
Yeah, looking at this now, because I haven't looked at the one you sent since I made the one for my other league, I realize how long my analysis was. It's probably like 5 times as long, and probably not necessary.
Well, I like how you did it, though. I mean, it's a different take than I did. I did it unit by unit, and yours was a little bit more, holistic or bigger picture. So I like that take on it too.
Anyways, I want you to know, there's a few people in my new league and in our old league. Carly and Logan especially love this weekly email. Or, well, yeah, you do it weekly, but especially the post-draft email coverage. I know I do, because once again, like you said, everyone wants to know what people think about their team and what their supposed chances are for the season. So I like it a lot. Logan sure loves it. He's actually the reason why I decided to do it for this other league, because he liked yours so much. I'm like, I guess I got to do that too.
Well, I mean, this just goes back to my personality, right? Like, and I appreciate all the praise here. I like to do things all the way. I'm either not going to do it, or I'm going to go 100, 100, 110 at it. And so this is me being really over the top. I could probably say a lot of the same things very quickly and save myself some time, but this took me, an hour and a half on Friday night after the draft.
Yeah, it definitely takes a little bit of time. I think I invested at least 2 hours into it, doing the one I did.
So
I didn't add in week 1 matchups, so I just did draft coverage. That was going to be too much time.
I got down there and I was like, oh man, I know I want to write a pre week 1 matchup thing, and I'm not going to like go do it again later. So I just busted it out real quick. So then I get down to to match what Yahoo did above for playoff picture. What am I saying the playoff picture is? And what's interesting is Yahoo actually, I think, did a pretty good job at picking the top 4. I think it was a little bit generous, or, and maybe a little off in some cases, but definitely pretty accurate, at least at the top. I don't know about the bottom. I'll get to that one, but, and obviously I got an F. I know you knew that, but I got an F. It's the only F. It's the first F I can remember seeing. They called me a fantasy nightmare, and so and I have it right here. So the Longhorns right now, who are going to the SEC after this year out of the Big 12, they have a saying that's "embrace the hate." And so for me, I decided to embrace the hate, and my new team name is Fantasy Nightmare, which works both ways. So it's pretty cool, I think. Usually I like to do player names, but I think this one's going to be mine for the season.
I think that you just put a little Bijan mustard on there, and it's all good.
Oh yeah, look, you got my shirt. All right, and then I do predictions of matchups and say something funny. Make fun of people for their age, or for having terrible teams, or shooting themselves in the foot. Remind people about some upcoming activities. Hard Knocks. I know that's one of the things we wanted to touch on real quick, and the kickoff of the regular season, and then put some funny memes in there. I really like this one. Let's just come from behind. It'll be hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, what you got?
No, I mean, as I know there's at least a handful of people out there that I've talked to and that have engaged with our first episode, that wanted to hear more about the constitution. And for those that take fantasy football, serious and are competitive like ourselves, I think that they're going to enjoy looking at that. And I predict that some people want to make some additions to their own leagues or request some additions to their own leagues. And so it's all good stuff, and just speaks more to our competitive nature and your attention to detail
Yep,
and your
there's that.
personality. Um, Other than that, man, you know, uh, for those that are new to fantasy football, or maybe you're a season or two in, and you're looking for an easy way to enhance your game. I mentioned it previously I think our first episode, and in the description below. Fantasy Football Focus on ESPN with Field Yates and Daniel Dopp. Excellent source of information on weekdays, as well as depending on who the team is, you could get a little bit of info for a couple players on Hard Knocks this year. The Jets. I don't think there's anything great there, but one more thing. And for funsies, there's the league. I think it is on FX.
Yeah.
Hulu. Older TV show covering a group of friends that play fantasy football. The comedy, it's pretty good.
I've rewatched that thing like 11 times. I love it.
I think I'm like 2 or 3 times. I wish they'd come out with more episodes or make like a new edition. But
yeah,
those are all things you can do to get a little bit more into your sports worlds, into your fantasy football team.
we'll get jacked up for this season. I like to also watch I won't catch every single preseason game, but I do like to go back and watch the condensed replays. You can watch like the whole game in like 30 minutes and get a sense for what's going on the team and like what offensive schemes they're running and who are they trying to get reps to and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's good. And the hype videos, especially for college hype videos, are really good. I don't know if I was a fan of the Undertaker on the latest Texas one. It seems kind of off, but I mean, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's where he went to school, but
whatever. But it seemed a little too dramatic for my taste. I think that's it for now. We're kind of going over a half an hour deadline. What's up?
I was going to ask you, do you have any outstanding bets for the season at the moment?
No.
So I've got 2. I've got Texas to win the championship, which by the way would be in Houston at NRG. So that would be really sweet if that happens. Got to beat Alabama tonight for that to make any sense. And that was a plus 2,500. So that got it. I think it still is plus 2,500. Hasn't moved since I got it. And then I also have a week 1 parlay for winners. So I've got Raiders, Titans, and Bills at plus 1,018. So if you and the odds have actually moved moved in my favor since then. Since I got that, they're down 200 points, which means that they think it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, I like all those actually. Yeah, no, I don't have any outstanding bets because our state.
If only we could, I'd have a lot more.
I'm sure it's coming eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who's a lawyer in the neighborhood here, and he follows very closely what's going on with the law in that area, very specifically online sports gambling. And he was sending me the information for Texas, and it was close. It had made it through the House, and it just had to be ratified by I forget the dude's name, but it's some Republican in Texas. And he basically said, I'm not going to do that as long as I'm in office. And that was for like another couple of years. And then he's highly likely to be reelected for another couple of years. And so it could be several years before that becomes a thing until they figure out how to make the profits go to his pocket. I don't know that it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's all about who makes the money. Where does the money go? Follow the money.
And whatever deals they have with the casinos in Oklahoma and Louisiana, because I mean, look at us. Like if we were going to go do that, that's where we would go. We'd go over to Louisiana, right? And so I'm sure those places don't want to lose the business that they get from Texas.
No, it's all about the money. All right, guys. This kind of wraps up episode 2 of Game Day Gambles with the Jones Brothers. Once again, I really appreciate everyone engaging with the podcast. It's rough. and raw. And we, like, subscribe, comment. We appreciate it all. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch
Post
you
some
guys for the
questions
next
so we can
episode.
answer questions
Oh
like a
yeah,
mailbag.
questions too. Yeah. I know we had a few people kind of dip some comments in there, but if you guys have questions or want clarification about anything we covered, or maybe even want us to potentially send out our constitution for you to look over, that's
Oh
certainly
yeah, that's a
something
good
we could
idea.
do. But yeah, just let us know. Thank you. We'll catch you next time. Broski, we still got like 3 more hours. So
Yeah, 2 hours.
all right. All right, we're out.
All right, hook 'em. I love you.
Welcome. Love you too, bro.
Bye.